just got a message from Brian. He's going to be a little late.
Thank you.
Go ahead and get started. Review our March minutes.
So moved. I'll second it.
Well, the only thing I wanted to just comment on was the community garden. I had some comments about opening it up to non-residents, but I don't know if we need to clarify non-residents who are providing services. Because I did have some people ask me about that. Or maybe like you don't think that's important.
No, I did not. That point was made. I did not include that because it was that we were more open to people doing. I'll
We can
include
leave it. I mean, I only had, once I explained it, they were fine with it.
Okay. Any other discussion on that?
Oh, that's right, the office goes at 3 o'clock, right? Need a hand? Do you do any track bag when you go away? Or do you what? Do you track in the bag or just like have one? I think
What's that? Yeah, all in favor? Okay, like I said, Brian is going to be a few minutes behind, but the selectmen usually tell us when we need to have officers, but I think because of just yearly, as terms are expiring, that's sort of housekeeping that we should do. Not to pitch myself,
I'll get in front of you. I'll nominate you as the
Yeah,
chair.
you don't even need to say anything. Yeah, don't.
All in favor of Ben being
Aye.
chairman?
Aye. You can
Done
give a
deal.
victory speech now if you'd like.
well, I was gonna say, but if anyone else.
That was pretty fast. That's gonna be a record.
You've been a pretty good glutton for doing a lot of extra
I
work. Much
know.
appreciated.
Yes.
So I guess in any other of the two roles, if you'd like to continue on, or
If anybody wants to be secretary, feel free.
I mean, I guess that was my only other concession was I'm essentially doing the secretary role.
And I think in that case, if you feel like it's consuming more time than you want, then we're probably, as a committee, obligated to use part of the funds that we get from the town to
Hire somebody.
hire somebody to do it. That's, I mean, I know you've been willing to and doing it.
No.
You've been doing a good job, so
Yeah.
it's more of, if you decide it's just conflicting with too much of your time.
No, it's not a conflict. It's more of like I'm really good at that part, and the president part is the part that I just sort of long range planning or having a vision for what needs to be happening on the committee. So, but since I'm already in the role, but I do always like to joke with Brian that we nominate him for,
Yeah, he needs to be vice chair.
yeah.
He's been vice chair. He's been vice chair for like 2 decades.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
You need to show up at certain meetings.
I'll nominate Brian as vice chair. Can we do that if he's not here? Does it matter?
I'll second that.
Yeah.
I'll vote,
Okay.
yeah. Aye.
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 okay. All those opposed? Any opposed?
Hmm?
And secretary? Nominate Pam.
Well, anybody else can be it if they want to. All I have is the key.
I'll second that Pam's nomination to be secretary.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right.
And just for the record, I agree, I mean, my term come up, a selectman asked me if I was willing to, I did, and my term has been renewed. I don't know who else was in this year's.
It was. It was filling Tom's positions, which was the open term, so.
Yeah.
The only thing I had on Prospect was the orchards, so I guess we can wait for Brian to get to that.
You still have happy skiers up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was quite happy up there. Went up last, well, maybe a week ago. It was still skiing very nicely. I was
I
quite
skied
surprised.
yesterday, yeah.
Yeah, I went up yesterday morning too. There's still
There's a lot of people still going up
a
there
lot of snow.
after tomorrow, you know, probably get refreshed again.
Getting more snow.
But, yeah, we might get a couple inches tomorrow.
I'm doing my best to extend the ski season by getting my bike out and tuning it out. Took it out for a ride yesterday. It was very optimistic, and it was like, oh no, it's still really cold, and my hands are now frozen.
Sandy too.
Yeah.
Makes it tough.
Yeah, I was in contact with Headwaters Hydrology. He still has us on his slate. He's got 2 big projects. It's early spring, so he will get to us early summer to do that. And to kind of tie into that, I met with the homeowners that bought the DeValian property last week.
Yeah.
Tom and Jackie.
Yeah.
They have a community garden plot.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
And they just had some questions regarding, they had granted an easement to the town along the embankment, and they were just wondering about coordinating our planting with whatever they were doing. And they also received I guess compensation for trees that were lost on their property that had to get cut down, and I don't know if the town was offered that same option.
I would guess the town might have paid them as part of the overall project, would have been my guess.
Yes, and so one of the things we discussed was that they were trying to talk, or they were thinking about they're, well, how would they use those trees there? Because where they lost them, they can't, they would ideally like to put them there, but part of it is on this easement that's on the embankment. So I don't know if,
This would be on the upstream side of the bridge. on
yes,
the
yeah,
property.
correct. Is if it, in a discussion there, if we need, if they'd be willing to donate those for planting on the other side of the bridge on that slope that, that currently just has the hemlock up high but is quite bare, as a way of retaining theirs. I think they were just more of that they
Yeah.
would like to maintain the goodwill of the town there, and they, yeah, I guess just maintaining the goodwill there, because they also would like to. They're pursuing some bank structuring. So I also wanted to put them in contact with you for. I guess it's hard to. Well, that house is so close to the river that
Yeah.
putting any sort of riprap, or because I basically told them what our conclusion probably would be is that it just was going to require some larger rocks placed in the river. If they're doing that, it's most likely going to require a crane. If they do that, if we need to coordinate something with them for our project to place there, so I guess just work keeping that.
Well, what might make sense is when the hydrology, Headwaters Hydrology comes, is having them take a look at their property as well, because whatever they do upstream could affect downstream.
Correct, and that was sort of what we had discussed, and they had also kind of discussed it with the Burr, about, you know, their house is quite high, like, above the river there.
Yeah.
So elevation is their key, and they are aware that any fortifications there, that they do that, is, the water will just get pushed to the other side. Like, I think they're aware of that situation. But they're also looking at purchasing property on the other side from the Christmas Farm little plot there.
Yeah.
So, just keeping that in mind. They're working, and I let them know about your work that you'd be doing, or that discussing along the riparian buffer along the golf course there, so also working.
Still up in the air because NRCS is up in the air.
And I let them know
Yeah.
that.
Where's the money?
Yeah.
Talk with Nels. Nels very optimistic, but
No.
I'm not quite sure where all the optimism is coming from. But that's Nels' personality.
Yeah.
Nels was very optimistic because we had a project possibility with him, and he was at first very optimistic that this, and I think he's backed down from that.
Yeah. And of course, the Dundee Forest is looking at it. Yeah. I was just, right now, no need to explain it, but it's just total chaos at the federal government level.
Yeah. Which sort of ties into spring planting. Emily Benson just got in contact with me, being like, we need to spend that money so we can close out the account. So,
Oh, the FEMA?
yeah.
Yeah. What do we have? $1,000, whatever it is.
Yeah, in that ballpark.
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact amount. So I think if we can just go ahead and in the,
Is there a date requirement to spend it? Because the money's in the town now, correct? Or, no, wait a minute, with a lot of those you have to.
we have to send documentation
Yeah,
of
yeah.
that. It was, I think we have 18, we're coming out to the tail end of things, or, so I think it was 18 months after the emergency, but I don't know where in the process that clock started. From
I would
the
ask-
event, the
yeah.
declaration, or the application.
We should ask Emily, because I mean, I think that, you know, we don't wanna lose the money, but conversely, we don't wanna just do something without, I think we've all discussed once the snow is gone and that we, and particularly after Headwaters Hydrology, is to kind of make a comprehensive plan as opposed to we do this and we do this and we do this with just very piecemeal planning, which I don't think serves our interest in the long run. But obviously, we got to do something before those funds dissipate at the same time.
Yeah, so I will get a kind of a outer boundary of how much time we have to do that. Where it's such a small amount,
Do you know if we could use that to pay for Headwaters Hydrology?
no.
We can. Okay.
I think it's very specific, kind of one for one. That was,
No, the reasons I ask is essentially we're asking them for professional advice to how to fix what was damaged by the storm. It's not disconnected by any means.
certainly.
But if we use the funds to,
It's how the funds were asked for and designated as to how you're going to get reimbursed. I just don't know what the latitude is.
Well, and yeah, so I let Emily know I would get back to her after our meeting tonight. Like I said, it's such a small amount that
how much is it? That was like
Like 1,000.
1,200,
it's
1,400.
just to replace the planting that we had done in the fall.
Okay, if that's what we put in. We're probably obligated to have to do that.
Yeah.
Then, yeah.
So I think that's a small enough area that even if it's not in the explicitly exact areas where it was washed out, we can continue it on that.
That's the area that got really gouged out pretty
Correct.
seriously. Yeah.
So if the planting were to happen on the, just closest to the roadside there,
In that case, it probably makes sense just to go ahead and order it, put it in.
I think that, rather than, yeah, I think that would.
Yay.
Yeah. Well, congratulations, Mr. Vice President.
Oh,
Vice Chair.
Vice Chair.
thank you.
As we can finish up, I just kind of skipped over Prospect for the moment,
Mhm.
so. Headwaters Hydrology will be doing a report for us early summer,
Oh, up at the falls?
yeah.
That's cool.
And just, we kind of have a ticking clock on spending the money for the plantings that were washed out. So I think basically, not exactly where they washed out, but just on that, closer to the roadside where we had, just kind of extend that a little bit further down.
When you say roadside, which road? Cross? Or-
Just at the handicap parking access,
Mhm, okay,
that first planting bed that's closest to the road,
yep,
it doesn't, we just kind of arbitrarily ended that. If
Mhm.
that could continue downstream,
mhm,
that would be a safe place to put that. That's not gonna be impacted by any
mhm.
future plans that may come up that, I think, cause it's
Oh,
not,
yeah.
it's not that much money, so it's not gonna pay for a huge amount of square footage for anything, just so we can continue those planting areas and get them in the ground.
Now, when they unload that, which would be on pallets, can they actually just drive it down and drop the pallet right down?
It's really not that much if it's just one load, because we did it last time.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of times they come with a little,
Little-
They just had a
Bottom,
big,
it's not a
they had a big
bobcat,
flat
yeah,
right
yeah.
in there. Or they, did they have the flatbread, and they come in different things. So one year they came with a big flatbed, and they didn't have any little truck. And the second time they came with just a bigger pickup truck with no little thing that could drive it down.
Now, if they did, then it would be nice if they could, if they don't, then they're gonna have to dump it
Yeah.
roadside, yeah.
Mm.
But if they bring it down right next to the site, then it's a pretty simple job, otherwise it always takes us time to just cart the stuff
Yeah,
down.
but I think it's only is it 700? Is it, I forget how many square feet it is, 100 square feet, I think that's all.
Is
it
that coming from, out of Freiburg?
Yeah, from Nick,
That's Maine,
Metallic. Who's that guy? Yeah. It's got a store down there.
what's the store?
It's a, I don't remember the name of it. So you can go down and pick it up if you want.
I'm spacing the name of the guy that I know, that it must be the same people.
Yeah.
Um,
Native or?
Maybe something Meadows.
So,
Carbon manufacturer.
okay.
Well, I guess if we can go ahead and just order that equivalent square footage and plan on getting that, because it's a small enough load that it can get delivered before, or we don't need to worry about road bans, unless they can only bring it on a big truck.
Right. Well, I mean, I think road bands will probably be pulled within, what do you think, take a few weeks?
There's snow tomorrow.
Yeah, but,
It'll be a while before they pull the road ban, I would guess.
yeah, I don't know, things are happening early this year, but we'll see. They pulled them early, that's for sure.
Yeah, so I guess if we can, I don't know about having a scheduling a cleanup day until we can get a date on when materials can get delivered.
So how much money do we have? Because I need to know in order to figure out.
I'll get you the exact number, and the square footage that we're requesting.
Because we're replacing the hay-scented ferns that we lost and then some of the other ferns that we lost. And then we needed the soils and the amendments in order to plant them.
Yes, so I think that's all covered. That's kind of that's how we requested it in those sort of increments. And it was, I think, the way we explained it was that it was all the sod, it was just that the fern mix had more ferns than blueberries. And they were sort of agnostic as to that. The only other thing in that pile of money was the fencing. And which I went around and around with them as to how flexible they were in like replacing like for like. So if that's something we have to leave on the table, I don't know if that's
Blue Meadow.
that's not
That's
a
Nick. Yeah.
it wasn't a great deal of money.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying, but if we have to leave something on the table, I think it would be in that category. But I don't think that we can switch that to more materials or amendments. So, but I will get you that, so we can get that ordered.
Well, and I think on the fencing, we'll just go buy some steel rods or something that we can put in quick and efficiently.
Yeah, I think that's good.
No sense leaving the money on the table.
Right. Well,
right now,
if
I
it's
think we were just
whatever.
putting in rate stakes.
Yeah.
I would just say go down and buy what we think is the right kind of thing at Lowe's that's more permanent than rate stake, and buy as many as the money allows.
Okay. Well, I'll get that exact number. But I just want to have that on the radar in the next couple of weeks, so we can schedule that kind of quickly. And probably coordinating like a load of wood chips at some point, just,
Okay, yeah, they're not chipping, I don't think any of those guys are out chipping yet. I mean, at least my guys aren't.
okay. I may have some coming, but I don't have a date on when
Okay.
that work is happening, so it may be later in May
Yeah,
for
'cause
wood chips.
I don't think, those guys have even started their stuff in ski mode.
I have somebody coming to my yard to get some trees, and it's May.
Yeah,
Well, they can't do a lot till the road ban is gone.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're still skiing. It's ski season.
Yeah, okay.
Are we buying the wood chips?
We haven't before,
No.
no. We're
Good.
still free. Yeah.
Because if you hit one of the services, because I happen to see Sulis has quite a pile of wood chips, but I'm sure they cost.
Yeah, they're like gold probably.
Yeah. But, you know, the tree service guys are always looking for places to get rid of it.
Yeah, most of them are now. A lot of them know that there's people out there like Greggy who,
Right.
so,
Or
yeah, we
half
still
they
have,
take it for nothing and sell it.
yeah, we still have 2 people that provide it for free.
Yeah. So I guess as that develops, I will just coordinate. Yeah.
Hello?
Did you have any other information on the orchard? Did you talk to John at all? Or?
No, I didn't talk to John, but Michael got back. It's like a revolving game. Michael got back. It's all the same thing. They like to do it in winter when they want to prune apple trees, you know. So no one's given them a price, and as far, I mean, I know John's been out there, and so has Michael. Not with me.
Okay.
Has anything changed in terms of, I just see it says orchard project. Is that summarizing that? Yeah,
We have
yeah,
an intention there,
yeah.
not a plan. Okay.
And I thought read in the minutes that Dick might have mentioned trying to do it in the fall as well.
I just think that in terms of if
Way
if
easier.
coordinating is going to be an issue, let's just put a date that works.
Mhm.
Like, it has to start, it has to start at some point.
Right, yeah. Well, and I think the idea of trying to get people up there in the winter, unless they're totally dedicated to do it in the winter, you know, like understanding like that is the process. You know, you can't say that you're interested in pruning something and picking a time to prune, which is in the winter, and then bringing up the conversation that, well, how am I getting my stuff back up there? And it's like, we've had this conversation, if you want to prune in the winter, this is what it is, it's a ski trail. And this is how you get your stuff up. This is what's entailed with it. Well, you know, that's, well, you know, I want to get paid for my time. It's like, you understand, this is the project. This is part of the project. If you want to do it the way you want to do it, then these are the parameters. Or we do it another time of the year, or someone else does it. So, I mean, I understand the little bit of hesitation in it, because I think there's concern that it all adds up to being expensive. You know, when you bring in like, how am I getting up there, and the time involved, and there's some Yankee kind of stuff about, you know, well, I know it takes a snowshoe up there, you know, it's like, when I go click,
But it is, I guess when we're talking about winter, are we talking like after January or before January, like December, January?
most people would say after January.
Okay.
Typically, I think in their mind. The other thing I think it's difficult is if you're gonna try to get those guys to commit to fall in their business, I think it's hard for them to pull away from what they're doing coming into winter.
Okay.
You know, like any of the people in the trades, it's like, if you have a job that's your real job coming into it, I think it would be difficult to say like, hey, we want this to be done before the snow falls, because I think in terms of priority, they might be like, I don't know if this is, so that would be my other, I'm not trying to make excuses for them either, but
As a
now that
point
we
of,
have the year, now that we have the spring, why don't we just say, guys, let's just go up, let's go look at it by June 1st. And then it can just be done, and no one can say, oh, it's winter.
I mean, I know you mentioned that this has a more complicated dimension, but if this just was something that went out for general bid, if we just put an ad in the paper or a request for proposal,
Good.
light a fire.
Yeah, I mean, I'm open for anything, but I'm not gonna stop my day in the middle of my day to go walk up there and meet somebody.
Sure.
On a short-term notice, cause like, hey, I got time today to go look at the orchard with you. It's like, I'm not doing that right now, I'm at work.
Okay.
So that's kind of the way it works out. They're trying to fill in their time and just be like, hey, I have time today. Like, yeah, I'm working in Intervale.
Well, I guess if we have, I don't want this to stall out another year.
No, me neither.
Um, And I know that the town doesn't have any sort of official bidding process for those things, so I guess we would just make up that policy as it is.
Well, why don't we do this? Right now, you can't walk up there, so you'd have to either ski or snowshoe.
Yep.
So why don't we just say, let's just try to have the two of them have their thing done by June 1st. If
Okay.
they can't have it ironed out by then, like, pick a time that's scheduled that someone can go, it's not just out of the blue.
Yeah, if it's a time thing, I'm familiar with the area, and anyone here could probably.
Is it just walking them and up and being like, here's the orchard?
Yeah.
What do they need?
Yeah, but
from
I'm
us?
just saying, like, right now, it's like, let's go up to the orchard. It's like, that's not a 5-minute. That's not like, hey, you're gonna explore for
Right.
a short walk. You're walking up to the orchard
Right.
from Valentine's.
Right.
You know?
Put a little sign up that says orchard.
Well, it's not a matter of not finding it. They want to converse about it. They know what the orchard looks
Sure.
like. There's a conversation that wants to be had about, like, what are we trying to do? They want to explain why you don't want to do this or do want to do it.
All right,
It's
well,
not
I
like
mean,
you want to paint your house. It's an orchard that's overgrown. That there's a real conversation to have about it. Why would you do this and not do that?
well, I guess,
And we're not pruning these to get big apple production or anything.
No, it's
We're
for that's
just to kind of,
you're pruning for the health of the trees, not for production.
if you get production, you get production. But that's like going up to a painter and saying, oh, I don't really want, I'm not painting my house for whatever. This is their job. They're not gonna be like, thanks guy, but this is what I do, you know? There's a process, I'm gonna do it this way, or I'm not gonna do it.
that's fine, if they say they're not gonna do it, they'll say,
Well, can't they go up and take a look and then come back and talk with you?
They know they do, yes. It just hasn't happened that way, you know? Like, when John got an opportunity to go, it was, this time it was,
Could they go up there on a four-wheeler?
yeah, but it'll be outside of, not now,
Okay,
yeah.
but that could, because
Once
we
you can
could
drive
steal
to
the
the
one
gate,
from the fire department that they
they
bought.
can both walk anywhere. It's just, I think, like, the point is, it's not gonna happen this week, and it's not gonna happen
No.
next week.
No.
So regardless, like, obviously they can walk, and they wouldn't be cutting trees, you know, wouldn't be managing orchards.
Right.
So it's not a matter of, but one of them lives over in past La Hole, and the other guy's local, but it's just been pulling teeth about it.
okay.
And just as a point of interest, like our trees were a day away from finishing the pruning on our little holding. So, I mean, that's two of us, and it's a lot of work. And we've got trees that have been pruned every year.
Okay.
So we're just, taking care of suckers and,
Yeah,
that's
that's
but-
enjoyable.
Yeah.
What has to be
You're
done
gonna go
there
up
is
there
not
and you're gonna
enjoyable.
take, a chainsaw with you and really clean out some
Right,
material.
right.
Let me ask a different question. What happens if we do nothing with those trees? They're not gonna die.
Yeah, they will. I mean, over time they will. They'll just be weaker and weaker
Yeah.
and break more branches.
I mean, I only ask because they've survived for God knows how long with minimal care. And I have, Ski Journey's got a couple on its land that they've never been pruned and they've been overgrown and now they finally cut back around them, but
Yeah, but that's not the point of the whole thing. The
Yeah.
point is you want to reclaim the trees.
well, I think it's one thing, the only reason I ask is, we're gonna mow around, so they're not gonna get competition from forest. So if you were managing apple trees for apple trees, you'd obviously wanna go through all the pruning. If the objective is just to prevent competition from other trees and sort of assume that they're gonna continue to live, then, because we're not pruning them, relative to trying to get a
You're-
crop.
You're pruning them so that they'll be the shape of a tree that you're trying to protect, in the sense that if you allow it to just do what it's gonna do, you'll continue to have broken branches.
Yeah,
And the tree's just weaker and weaker, so.
Right, and I
We
think,
have an opportunity
Yeah.
to reshape the tree so that they'll be healthier. And then it's our option to.
well then I think, without making this thing be a meeting after meeting circular thing, is just set up a time in early May to go out when you can actually drive up there, because you're gonna have to have snow. You don't wanna ride up that road
No,
until the snow melts out, period, or you're just gonna wreck the road.
no.
right,
You're gonna wreck all the water bars and everything else if you do it before then. It's just set up a time to
Mhm.
go up and meet with them sometime in mid-May.
yeah, so I think late May, June is fine, and it is not a pressing
Right.
emergency, but it is something that Rick commented on, that there is a lot of growth at the base of the trees that they're not able to get to when they mow, so that
Right.
competition is happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not like mowing you do with you're going in there and it's rock. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
that site is it's not a field that someone planted apple trees in at this point. It's a difficult area just to walk through. And then there's the apple trees and everything that's going on. So yeah, which is normal. It's not I don't know.
All right, well, I think that if we can just, let's just, we'll meet with you in the summer.
I work with both of these people coming into this spring too, so it's not as if they're not, it's like everybody's
Yeah.
back together, so
Okay,
I work around them.
But I would say let's just try to set up a time with them in late May or something, early June. Get a date to get them up there when you can drive up and take a look at it. Go from there.
that sounds logical.
Mhm.
Anything else on Prospect?
No, just been quiet.
Is there, as things thought out, is there anything we need to do with the new parking area?
I don't think so.
Or do we need to bring the road crew in to address? I know there were, I think I saw that there was
It's a little
some deadfall in
rutted.
there that needs to get.
It's a little rutted when you go from where the turnaround is up to the parking lot, but, the fact that the rest of that road is snow covered and groomed, you won't get much erosion, in that section. But, I would say after the snow melts out, we take a look at it and then determine whether we need to get the town to.
Yeah, I would
Straight
just
through.
like to, as soon as that
Yeah.
we can get eyes on that. 'Cause I think there was a tree that fell across in there last time I was up there, vaguely recalling that, but, okay.
Well, there were trees out on Boggy Brook, one that went down, but that was actually on Forest Service land. And I know that the ski touring clears it out, because their groomer is stuck up there until the road ban goes. And they will groom periodically if there's new snow, or it makes sense to. I mean, it's all courtesy grooming right now, because there's, anybody can go ski there for free.
Okay, well, just something to keep on the radar as things
Yeah.
start to melt out.
When it does melt out, do we think we need to go and do any like defining of parking areas? I mean, the first lot, it's like very clear because it's dirt. But it's just very clear of like, okay, this is where I can park my car, this is where I can't.
Gary did work on the second lot.
Did he? I just,
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
I just hadn't
Oh,
seen.
yeah.
Maybe I just hadn't seen it.
No,
So it's like well defined, just so people don't get too close to the edge or get too. There's like a soft spot. I
The
remember.
width is defined, but
Mhm.
not the depth.
no, Gary brought in materials and
Okay.
so on and so forth.
Okay.
So that I guess that would be one of the things to monitor is to making sure that people aren't parking
The
past.
depth is,
Because I remember it gets soft at the end, right? Isn't it?
well, you
But
can
no.
be driving.
If I recall
Right.
correctly, he kind of got a barrier and he brought material in. Let's see how it performs. But
Okay.
Gary usually was pretty good at what he did.
Oh, yeah.
Well, any compaction issues or settling issues, I'm sure there'll be
Yeah.
some of that. Fold that into things to keep an eye on. All right. Gray's Inn.
I walked around Gray's Inn the other day up where all the past view sheds were. To reopen those view sheds now, there's substantial tree removal that would be necessary. There's some big stuff that would have to go. It's more than just pruning.
It is. There's from the top, like above where the original views were, like higher up. There's like a couple spots where there are nice views of Mount Washington. And I've almost thought maybe we can just move the signs. And it'd benefit by like one or two trees coming down, but they're pretty big and they're right at like where it's switchbacks. And I just don't want to like
Yeah.
loosen up all that soil.
It's not a small job. It's not where
Yeah.
you just go out with a pruning saw and you.
Oh yeah, no, these would be like someone like taking down a big tree.
That's
That's
true.
what we did last time. Last time they came up and literally cut the views
Yeah.
and dropped big trees.
But it seemed like if we did it, it would make sense to do it maybe higher. But you're right. It did look like there's been a lot of growth.
It's not a small job.
No. I think
So it's a question, do we value that? One of them, both of them, none of them versus the cost
I like
versus
the-
maintaining them.
I like the idea of moving signs.
Yeah.
I definitely think the at least one of them. I mean, it's nice. It gives it like
Which is that?
a
Mount
real
Washington or
destination. Yeah, the Mount Washington one, I think.
Yeah.
Which is like higher. It's like when you're at the top, like after you go past the glacial rock and you're coming down, there's like a switchback,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like right at the top of that
Now,
switchback.
let me ask this though, did you look at that leaf on, leaf off?
Leaf off.
No,
There's the middle one.
my guess is that view would not be there on leaf on.
It's a seasonal view.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of views in town.
I think it'd be too much work to do the bottom, to do lower down. I do think that just cleaning out the foundation, the old cellar, not old cellar, the old foundation, that looked pretty easy. That looked like, clippers and weed whips and things like that. You could clean that up with just easy hand tools.
Would that be more of a late, early summer, or there's nothing pressing on?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything pressing.
I mean, if you want, and I don't know whether she's interested or not, but Karen, who works with the ski touring stuff during the winter, and she works for the Forest Service during the summer, does do tree cutting. We could hire her professionally.
Or at least have her come take a look.
Yeah, take a look and see if she's interested in being hired to do it.
It would. I mean, I think it would be cool because it does give it like, definitely makes it feel like a
She went up and
destination.
did some of the, when the Ski Touring Foundation did the Prospect Farm.
Hmm.
But, and I don't know whether the Forest Service has hired her back because it's unclear who's working for the Forest Service anymore. But she was a seasonal, but she would be in between ski touring and when she starts her work with the Forest Service, if she still has it, but good contact with her. I think she was charging like $50 an hour or something. She's got the equipment.
That seems
Seems
really
very.
low.
That seems very reasonable.
Like, let's just do that.
That's what she charged me when she came and did some stuff in my house, like a couple of years back. I don't know what her rate is now.
Might have been friends and family discount.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. I mean, I think,
Do you want me to reach out to her and can I contact her through Ski Touring now? Probably not. They're all gone.
Ellen's in Alaska because she's up there with a program to work with Native kids on. But she'll be back, I think, the 14th of April. So just
I'll
contact.
contact Ellen and ask to.
Yeah,
Okay.
just ask for Karen's. You know Karen.
Was she a patroller? What did she do?
She was doing grooming this year, and she did, in the fall work, she was doing some of the tree clearing up on Prospect. As part of as part of just getting the trails ready for the winter.
Yeah, I'll when she gets back from Alaska, I'll get her contact information and just see if she would just go look. Like if she'll walk up there and just say, hey, yeah, I could
Yeah,
drop a tree
just
or
tell you
two.
whether she feels comfortable, doing that solo or not, and what the rate is.
great. Anything else on Grays? Okay.
No,
Because I think the second question there is if they cut it, people don't object. It's one thing to cut it and to lay the trees down, and you're done, you walk away. If you're asking them to remove the trees,
that's not what was done last time.
yeah,
It
I
was
think we're
dropped.
talking about dropping them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that would be the first question they would ask you.
Community garden?
So, Jen Hayes, Jeff's wife, was able to, submit the application today. So that means we would hope to get on the, I think the third Thursday of May, or something like that, to be able to present the request.
Okay.
And I did notice that when the snow cleared a little bit, that there was a hole over there, right on top of where our water line is, so Jay came out and said, yeah, they cut it, so we'll have to fix that. And he said Jen might be able to help. But he also said that the leach field's gonna be pretty far back. So I'm thinking if we can get them to fix the water line so that it's buried, we would still be able to have water for the summer. Or whenever they're gonna be out there.
It was removed just because it was leaking?
I'm sorry?
It was removed because it was leaking, or?
Well, no, this is the water line that goes across the field to the, to the garden. So from the
Right.
library to the garden,
Right.
they dug a test pit. And so
Oh.
what Jay said is that there was snow on the ground, so they didn't notice that, there's actually a big line that shows where the line is because the grass never filled in. So it's right, yeah, so it's cut.
They hit the needle and raised that.
I know, it's like they had the whole field to go dig a hole.
It's better than a gas line. Yeah, okay.
And actually, when you talk with Ellen about Karen, it could either be Karen or Silas. Both of them are very competent at removing big trees.
Is that Silas the groomer?
Are they gonna repair that?
Well, Jay said that, he thought Jim would be able to do it, but otherwise, said you can just use a hose for, until we can get to it.
Sure. Okay.
Unless their trucks driving over, in which case maybe you can, so, I don't know. We're gonna have to figure that out. That's why I'm thinking the sooner we can get the line repaired and buried, so when they do go over it, it might be sufficient.
Okay. Wildcat River. I talked to the VRAP coordinator today, and he said if we're able to run our own tests, that they may have funding, but they have to be run in Concord, and I just don't think I don't have the ability to get down there to take samples, so we can just run them here.
You're talking about the bacteria samples?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was surprised the DO was so low.
I think those are an error.
That seemed like incredibly low.
That would be indicative that there's some real issues in the river.
Yeah.
There's a problem with the DO levels.
It was like 57% or something like that. I was like, what? Saturation level?
It's way off from all the historic previous.
It seemed crazy.
I've done a lot of DO, and for an aerated stream. Where were these taken? What's the site? Location?
Oh, I have it there.
What would you expect the DO to be?
For a stream like that, like 80 or 90?
So when it's high like that, what does it mean? Looks like it
Well,
should be
it's low.
80, should be 80 or 90?
8 to 9 milligrams per liter, parts per million, whatever unit you want. And the saturation should be up close to 100%.
Yeah.
This wouldn't even pass state standards in Maine.
So what is this one saying it is?
It's less than 75%.
It's saying, it's like it's the percent, it's the amount of oxygen the water can possibly hold.
It would, if those numbers are accurate, it says that there's a hell of a lot of organic material in there that's decomposing or something.
Yeah.
So it's taking the oxygen.
It's like, yeah, it can be like salinity can affect
I think
DO,
there's
water
a lot-
temperature.
Was the meter tested against the standard?
Yes.
And what was it? Yeah.
Well, I can go over the testing protocol, but that was one of the extremely temperamental.
That's what yeah. That's because the membrane's on it. And if the membrane's, what is it, the Y side? Yeah.
Yeah, so that one was very temperamental, and it was hard to get a stable reading on it. Like, it would just continue to fall, and would move around.
If the instrument's working right, it should be stable as all get out, because you're sticking it into a stream that's going, I mean, I've done a gazillion DO measurements in my past life, that the fact that it's not stable tells me that there's a problem right there. Your
So-
pH would be less stable because it's such a low ionic solution, poorly buffered system, but the DO should be, in this case, your measurement should be pretty stable.
Well, that tool is calibrated at the beginning and end, so, yeah.
There's a quick and dirty
I'm-
test, yeah. There's a
I'm
quick and-
gonna put it all on operator error,
yeah.
but
I mean, the only reason
it
I
was
bring-
consistently weird, so
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
that seems more like it's the tool, so.
yeah.
um,
The only reason I bring it up, and probably Mike for the same reason, is, if you have an anomaly, you want to be careful about throwing an anomaly out, because it could actually be true. But in this case, it's hard to understand that anomaly, and if the anomaly is true, it means we have a serious water quality problem in the river.
At that level, we'd be saying,
Yeah.
that's pretty, it's not like eutrophic, but that's really low.
Yeah, and it's throughout the season.
Mm-hmm.
That would say that whatever, either the machine is consistently reading low, or consistently we've got a major pollution problem, they're one of the two.
What would the pollution problem be?
It'd be like you've got a lot of organic material that's coming in that's decomposing to use up the oxygen.
Could it be a dead animal?
no,
Like
no.
a moose?
Oh,
or
more
We
like
something?
got multiple months there, if it was a dead animal, it would have decomposed and gone. Your values would have done this. This is,
It's more like salinity, water temperature, or like bacteria, essentially.
Yeah.
Like things breaking down, decomposing.
and this is a highly aerated river stream because there's so much rock rapid it's constantly getting the oxygen rejuvenated just from.
If I think about it, which I may not after I leave this room, if I think about it, maybe I'll grab some of the. We've got some DO test kits at Tin Mountain, and I could just walk down and
The
take a
hack
sample.
kits?
And just like they're the blue Chemets. I'm forgetting the chemical. You just match the blue. You match the color spectrums.
It's a Winkler test.
Yeah.
Are we gonna do any other monitoring for water quality in town? Didn't we used to do that? Period. It's been a while,
I thought it
but
was Kevin Bennett that, for some reason, was our.
Well, there was.
I'm thinking back too far.
No,
Well, there
Dick,
was,
you're correct. Dick,
with,
you are correct, because there are historic
Phil.
records.
Phil
Phil,
Davis.
Phil Davies did it. He
Yeah.
did it.
Yeah.
He did it for sediment. That's what he was testing for.
Yes.
Big ones you'd want to check, and has the greatest probability, is bacteria. And for example, we used to swim in Whitney's Pond, and they closed that down because of Davis's animals were so close.
Well, there's a pig farm right above.
Yeah, and because you have a lot of contact with the water at the falls, your greatest, I mean, to me, the greatest concern out there is with a lot of people contact, you wanna know what your bacterial levels are.
So I guess that was my next question, or to answer Dick's question. We are signed up to participate in this monitoring program with the state again, and I think that we'll just run our additional test, the bacteria test. So are there particular sites where we should do that, or do we want to do that at all of the sites? And are there additional sites that we'd be looking at adding? So
The most important site to do it is at the Jackson Falls, because that's where your people contact is happening.
doing the bacterial test.
Yes.
And where do you do it? Do you do it up by the bridge? Do you do it in the middle? Do you do it down the bottom?
I would do it right underneath the bridge.
I do too, above and below. And
So
then you get an idea of what's happening right there. The same with Great Brook. You can do the Dundee Bridge where it crosses, and then go down a ways, pick up a spot,
Yeah.
and see what's happening in between.
So we didn't do any testing on Great Brook. We only tested on Wildcat Brook and the Saco at the town, Bartlett Jackson town line. So working upstream, we tested it at the Bartlett Jackson town line, at the, I guess essentially at every road crossing. So at the ball fields, at Valley Cross, at Moody Farm, and Maloon.
That was historic. Or is that what you did? this
That's
past-
what I did last year, and those were tight sites that Phil had done.
So you did,
in the early
which again, you
2000s.
did it below the confluence of the Ellis and the Wildcat, right?
Correct?
Down at Timmy's Bridge, did you say?
No, just at the town line, just at
Okay, and then
across from the transfer station.
what were the other sites?
At the 16A bridge in town here, at the ball fields on the Riverwalk. At Valley Cross Road.
Which is
The
Gilbridge.
bridge.
Yeah,
On the Gills Bridge.
yeah. Yes.
Further,
And what was the fourth one?
Moody Farm.
Gills Bridge.
there's Gilbridge, sorry.
Moody Farm, okay.
And then Maloon. So that's where we tested.
So Moody Farm is where Moody Farm hits the junction of Carter Ranch Road.
Yeah.
Pretty well covered. I mean, I'm just trying to think of where your animals, because that's where the potential is. When you're doing Maloon,
Would they all have them really low?
No,
Testing?
the one that was at the, oh, those are a little higher. They were all kind of consistently like that.
the values are pretty similar between all of them except Yeah.
This doesn't have, this is missing 2 sites that he, in their historical record, he had them under 2 different things, so I have the other locations here that I can send out. But, do we want to add Great Brook? And the number of sites that we did was, once I got a good rhythm, it took about 2 hours to test all of those sites. I don't know, adding more tests adding more tests is gonna make that, no, that's just filling the vial.
If you had a lot of, I mean, I'm just scanning the data here right now, but, there's so much consistency here, the need to add a lot of stuff. It's just a lot of time and dollars. If you start to have inconsistent results between these, then you'd wanna figure out between those 2 points what's up. But these values are very similar to all of the old historics, because I did go back and take a look at them. The only one that's wacko was the DO.
So,
And the fact that the DO is consistently low at all of these sites, which it definitely should not be, tells me the DO
Yeah.
is erroneous.
well, okay, so would we want to add Great Brook into that sampling protocol just so that we can collect?
I don't think you need to. If your Moody Farm started to show you, if the Valley Cross Road values start to show you a problem, then you'd want to do Great Brook to try to differentiate between whether it's Great Brook or whether it's upstream on the Wildcat.
Okay,
I mean, you can use the data to instruct you how to use your money efficiently, and that's why if the Valley Cross values were problematic, then you'd want to start to sample to see where upstream the problem is coming from. But until Valley Cross tells you got a problem, you're spending a lot of money to show you that I can't differentiate something because there's no problem. If that makes sense.
That makes sense to me.
yeah. So then that would just be looking at doing the bacterial testing above and below Jackson Falls, just having those be the 2 sites we do that.
Yeah, I mean, the only reasons you do it below the falls would be, if people are in there with their kids with diapers. But that's a hit or miss thing, because if the kid's in there with a diaper, it's through there within 20 minutes. And unless you're there to do that sampling 20 minutes later, you wouldn't see it, just because the water's moving through there so fast.
Okay.
That's
Unless you-
why.
Unless you have low water.
Doesn't it?
Still.
That water is just high gradient. That water's.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
feel
how do
awful.
you can't manage that anyway.
I mean, the best time to test for bacteria is right after a storm, because that's when stuff in the watershed, when you're in a drought, you can have all kinds of stuff in the watershed that's willing to migrate, but it won't migrate because you're not getting any surface runoff. So the best time to look for your bacterial infections, loading is right after a rainstorm, a moderate rainstorm, because that's where it'll move like your animal feces, your dog feces, all that stuff into the river.
Right. I mean, and even if you did get a higher reading below than you did above, like you're saying, it's like,
Yeah.
what are you gonna do? Like, watch?
I mean, it's every sample is money,
Right.
and historically, this river reach, and when you look at the watershed, you have pets that can cause a problem. You can have animals like Rick's pigs that were just upstream, and there was no riparian buffer or anything,
Oh, yeah.
so his pig pen there was just flowing right into Great Brook at that point.
And the golf course is one of the biggest users of, pesticides and,
But that's not going to show up in bacteria.
oh, no, not
Yeah.
in the bacteria,
Yeah,
but
that'd be the nitrogen.
But
in
And
there.
if you're testing for
Monitoring,
pesticides, you're talking big dollars to test.
Why, so the things that the state would be willing to test for are E. coli, phosphorus, nitrogen, and chlorides.
Yeah, and the reasons why you test nitrogen, which I don't think we need to do, is if your bacteria counts are up, the nitrogen would help you tell you if it was coming from septic. Septic would be the other source of your problems out there is just poorly maintained septic systems. That would be, in this watershed, that would be the other source. Chlorophyll A, if you're looking at a lake or a pond, I'd put your money in it. But we don't see great big algal scums and that sort of stuff. I wouldn't put your money on chlorophyll A. Chloride is going to be from road salt, which is a serious problem, but your conductivity values are very low, and most of your road salt is going to move through there in early spring with spring freshness out of it because it's so soluble. So I wouldn't spend a lot of money on your chloride. I wouldn't spend it on the chlorophyll.
So you're saying the state.
Phosphorus and
Or-
the reasons why the state does the phosphorus, nitrogen, and chlorophyll is that they're looking for eutrophication, algal blooms, that sort of stuff.
I think they have a small pot of money that they can run tests on, and the previous coordinator, I think his area of research was chlorides in the watershed, so he ran those himself. But I guess I'm just asking this since we'll be paying for the E. coli test out of our pocket, where is that most efficiently used? So if we just pick that one side and it looks like expanding and just keeping our current sample locations just to kind of build out better data this year, if we can.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can, it's kind of like medical tests where you can keep testing and testing, and it'll cost you a lot of money. The question is how and why you're doing it. If your conductivity values were high, because this is close to distilled water, these values right here, which is typical for this area. If your conductivity values went up, it would tell you that your chloride was up, and it would tell you that some of this other stuff was going up. So the cheapest crude index is actually your conductivity measurements. And yours right now are very low.
Well,
Which is
just
what I would
to
expect.
throw shade on that, the connectivity is done with the same meter, so
No, it is and it isn't, because the meters, I mean,
well, I did the test, so I'm telling you, I recorded that data off of the same instrument. So if it's
no, but the probes are different.
okay,
Right.
And your probe for oxygen, my guess is you have a membrane across on the probe.
it's a big probe head, so I can't
Yeah.
can't really see inside of it.
And oxygen conductivity is your probe that's going to be sensitive to how it's calibrated and maintained as your DO. Your conductivity probe is pretty bomb-proof.
Okay. Well, I guess that's good information to know.
Yeah.
Going forward.
But I want to only go back and say that your conductivity levels are very low, which tells you you're not getting a lot of stuff. And that's that's what you would expect here, because we're basically off a metamorphic granitic. It's a very soft water situation. And the minute it jumps up, it's going to tell you that it's coming from something other than the geology.
Okay. Okay. Well, I will put out into eNews that I'll be doing this, and if there's any volunteers who would like to help. I think with Caitlin, when Caitlin and I did it, it went fast, but doing it by myself was pretty straightforward. So. More hands.
But if we're going to do bacteria, what we might do is just start off and do a few samples, like in July and August at Valley Cross Road, and just see if we're getting stuff to show up.
Okay.
Because that's when the use is happening.
Okay, well, I will submit our plan to the state and schedule a time to pick up the instruments. And
Because the other thing is we have historic values to compare it against, so. What this does is it tells you, and I did look at the historic values, these outside of the DO are pretty much spot on, which is telling you that stuff is staying both clean and pretty consistent.
Just for clarification, are we paying for just the E. coli, or do all of the tests costs have a fee associated with them when you send it to the state?
We will run the E. coli test privately.
Gotcha. Okay.
They have to be tested within like 24 hours, and you have to keep the sample
Yeah, I
cool,
think-
and you have to get it to the lab.
It's the Granite State Analytics.
Oh, is it the place in Conway? Is it the
The Granite State Analytics.
right in the middle of North Conway, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm
I
taking
would
stuff
guess it's
before.
probably $50-$60 at least.
Right off 16, it was
You said it was 35?
35, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the one right where, across from Peaches.
So you don't have the Y-side meter now, you get it back from the state, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
I'll ask him about that, and if he has any insight onto that, onto
Yeah.
those values.
And because Mike has access, if you start to get those values again, you have access to the hack kit or.
Yeah, let's just, I might, like, I'll,
Just run it against.
I
it.
might just, yeah, if I think about it the next month, walk out there and just look at what it looks like at Valley Cross or maybe at the ball field.
Well, no, I was gonna say when he gets the meter, just
Oh,
run a
Just
comparison.
yeah,
side
yeah,
by
yeah.
side?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the other thing to do is just take a water sample, shake it up so that you know that it's back up to 100% saturation. Stick your probe in, and if it's telling you it's way below, it's telling you got a probe issue.
Well, okay, so the
There's a picking.
sampling protocol is not, it's not a live sample, you're collecting a sample in a bucket. And how would that affect?
You're collecting a bucket, you take it over here and you stick your probe in there,
Yeah.
right? And my second question is, do they have you move the probe
No.
around? That would be your other thing, is you want to move your probe around in the water a little bit. To keep, because you have a chemical reaction at the probe head, and if the probe is just sitting there stagnant, that'll start to give you what you just described, which is decay.
How active? So if you're not moving it around, if it's in a stream and the water's moving around it,
That's normally the way you should test it.
So you move the bucket.
Just take your probe, stick it in as the river's going by.
and I would rather do that.
Yeah.
That's what I would, that is standard protocol for, that'll tell you what your DO levels are.
I didn't want to deviate too far away
Yeah.
from their method, so.
That's our bad.
I wonder if their methods are they for rivers or are they for lakes?
They're for rivers.
They're for rivers.
But when you stick to, well, let's not spend
Okay.
on that. I can sit up, I'll go out with you one time. But my guess is if you move the probe around just slowly like this, you probably see values up around 8 or 9.
I feel like when the probe was moved around, it would not settle on a number, it would just jump around. Anyways, all right,
When you get it,
excellent.
let's get together.
I'll ask him.
I'll go through it with you.
Jeff Hayes, what do you think? Come on, we haven't heard from you.
I'm not much on probes, I know about a little bit about them, but it was above,
I just wanted to hear you.
above my experience level.
Yeah.
Aliens and birds.
I did work at NASA for a while.
I don't have anything on easements. Did you get those
I did,
forms
thank
out?
you.
Great. Nothing on wetlands.
I have some on wetlands. A resident in town concerned about a property off Alpine Drive. Apparently the issue is more or less, and this is a person that's got some knowledge about wetlands and wetland delineation, and apparently, I guess they were assessed, there's a septic permit for the site, but there's no flagging of where the actual wetland is. And a consultant went out there, but she's kind of concerned because I guess the property's not developed now, but there's, I guess, plans to put a house on it, obviously with the septic design in place or permitted. So the concern is just, and I guess Kevin Bennett knows about it as well already, but I just wanted to bring that forward. I don't know how much oversight there is, like people say they do something, does someone check to see that, you know, they are properly flagged, like the parameters or the boundary of the wetland, so.
So
It should be on the plot.
right, so there's a property that has had a wetland that was delineated. Someone delineated a wetland and.
Yeah, somebody went out to assess it, and I guess, but she said there's like no flags or anything for like where the actual.
When you say assess it, meaning like the hydrologist or
Yeah,
the person who marked it, but it never got marked, but it'd be on the septic plan.
That should be on the septic plan.
yeah, and I don't know if it is, because she's looked at the plan, Kevin provided a copy of the plan. But, like I said, he knows about it already, so it may not, it may,
That's a good place in
the
between.
issue may fix itself, but I just wanted to bring it up just so.
Yeah, because someone can just literally take off the wetland boundary
Oh,
flagging
yeah.
tape, like it's just pink tape, it
Yeah.
says whatever, BOE or BOW or whatever. But yeah, usually any plan that you look at would have it delineated right on it.
But it's just been laid out, there's no work that's been done or anything.
I don't believe so.
I don't-
I think they just sold the property, so it's like contingent now.
Okay.
It's like in the process, but.
I mean, I guess if that comes up and they apply, I mean, they wouldn't, if
Well,
there's
we would never see it unless there's a wetland and they're
work.
trying to do work around it.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was saying, we wouldn't, have we seen a permit on that? That doesn't,
No, I mean,
It's 13 Alpine Drive, I believe.
and the other one is that if it's not on a plan, then, if it doesn't show up on the plan, then the state inspector wouldn't have anything to, to say, hey, there's a wetland there. He could see what appears to be a wetland, but it doesn't mean it technically is. I mean, for someone to say what is a wetland, that's why there's a professional whose job is to that.
Would it be on the plan that they submit for the septic plan approval to the state?
Only if the engineer who drew up the plan was given the information that there's a wetland.
So they
Like
don't
he
have
might
to-
see something and be, well, this appears to be X, Y, or Z to me, and then he hires someone who comes out and says, yes, this is a wetland, I'll delineate it. And then the surveyor slash engineer comes out, takes that data and puts it onto his site plan slash septic plan. And usually the person who's delineating that draws up his own version, which isn't like, it could be something just drawn on a map. And then, he leaves his points, and then the surveyor comes out and surveys the points, and then it's, now you have a wetland that's been delineated on your plan, and it's, for some people that'd be a bummer, because certain things you can't do now. But
But it's also
someone
dependent upon the
didn't-
engineer noticing it in the first place.
yeah, I mean, it's hard to miss, because it's literally, it's what you're looking for, pink tape, or whatever that tape is, usually it's pink. It says right on it, like BOE, and it's numbered, you can just follow it, to connect the dots.
okay, well, Kevin would be the next, or the first step there, so.
Have you seen the property?
No, I mean, I've been by it, but I haven't like looked at it. But he's aware of it, so I just wanted to
Is Alpine Drive what used to be called Upper Alpine Drive?
Yeah.
So 13, would that be the
On the right.
very end? Like,
No, it's the, do you know where Tom and Donna
not anymore, I lived down that
are?
road years
Okay,
ago.
yeah, so it's basically about halfway down the road.
Okay, yeah.
Is Alpine the one with that splits with presidential, or is it the one before that, the right?
Before.
So, okay, that right.
Mm,
Yeah.
At the top of the hill,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's next to Kathy's.
Huh. Yeah, there's some drainages for sure that come through there.
Before
Hmm.
before.
Before presidential.
Before the
No,
split.
I'm sorry,
of this.
no, it's not, I know what you're talking about.
After Kathy's.
Okay.
I think it's after. Is it after Kathy's house? Or is it before?
I'm not, I didn't like map it, I just saw
I
like,
think
I
I
went
noticed
on
that
realtor.com to
I
figure out
noticed there
which.
was a for sale sign, it looked like it was kind of falling over, so that's why I'm thinking it's the lot after Kathy's.
Okay. Um, Dundee Community Forest. I don't know how detailed we need to get into what was covered at this meeting.
It was a very confusing meeting.
I guess we already sat through that meeting once. We shouldn't do it again.
I have 4 pages of notes.
The three of you did that?
Yes.
Representing different groups.
Do-
I know, but
Does
summarize.
somebody take minutes of the meeting,
Yes.
Yeah.
or do you have to take your own?
I believe
good wife
Ann Bennett.
takes
I believe
the
Ann Bennett
minutes.
does.
Dick, your good wife takes that.
She takes very good minutes.
She does.
Why was it just a?
There's been so much focus on the Ham House that the rest of it has gotten derailed.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise
And there's, I went back and did a little bit of homework afterwards. They've contracted, let me see if I can summarize it and make her, Ben can add to or correct what I say here, is they have contracted to redo the forest management plan. And what is still laying out there undone is a recreation plan. And so the next meeting, I think now is intended to actually get to starting to develop a recreation plan. And when I looked at the easement terms, et cetera, after that meeting, because I was a little confused what was playing out as well, is the recreation plan actually is required within the forest management plan. Now, the forester is not a recreation manager, so this group has got to get its act together about the recreation plan. And obviously, there's different parcels, of which
Yeah.
some parcels are gonna be okay for certain kinds of recreation, and others are gonna be taboo for it. And that group has gotta sit down and kinda work through which is which.
And so much of it relies on parking, because if you're gonna have a recreation plan and invite people in, you gotta have someplace to,
And there
Park.
is a second thing, and I
Should be.
passed this on to the trust already, but there is, the state has a trails funding program. And I think that parking and the potential trail up to Tin Mountain would be very competitive, which could bring in as much as $80,000, but they're gonna need to attend, and Upper Saco Valley would have to put that in. I think they'd be, when I look through it, I think they'd be extremely competitive. And they could put it in for the parking and for that trail.
When you say competitive, I'm missing competitive.
You take a look at what they're funding, and what the requirements are, and then you ask yourself, am I trying to fit, a square block in a round hole or not? And if you are, you realize you can put a lot of time into writing a grant,
Right.
and your odds of getting the grant money are pretty low, so it's a low, it's an investment of time to put a
Right.
grant. When I read through what they fund and how they fund it, et cetera, and I passed this on to Upper Saco already, is you're probably extremely competitive because the fit is good. You're obviously competing against the other projects, and there's a finite amount of money there. But to me, and they have to get a little bit in front of having a recreation plan because of the timing, so the world is not perfect. But they have to get that grant proposal in by May.
So, yeah, I think that was the main homework that came out of the meeting, was that all of the groups representing recreation need to kind of come to the next meeting with an ask of,
Was Maya there?
he was not.
He was not.
To be honest, when you take a look at what the original forest management plan did, and it outlined the areas, personally, I think this group is losing track of what has already been done. But when you look at the original forest management plan that they have, and it designates the exemplary natural areas and the areas of certain kinds of potential, it isn't that complicated what we're looking at. We're just making it extremely complicated. There are certain areas you're not going to do any recreation management plans. There's only probably 1-2 areas where you're really looking at any kind of infrastructure. One is parking and whether you connect the trail there, and the other is the area that does not have any special riparian areas or high elevation, et cetera, and that is the block that is the double A block.
Mhm. Right, so it's both in the same, basically the same
And
swath.
the original forest management plan laid out where some of the potentials were. I'm willing to bet you that he was pretty much spot on.
Yeah, I'd be willing to say it is.
Yes, so I think that is kind of where we left. They did contract someone to prepare plans that would be prepared on a parcel basis, so I'll have to go back and look, but the first section will be completed this year, the two remaining parcels may not be completed for another year.
Meaning having a plan.
Having a new forest management plan prepared.
I was under the impression that he will have that plan by next year.
Because they're broken up by,
The three big segments.
yeah, so the first two, because that was my question, and it was.
I have to go back and look at notes, but
It was. So the company that is preparing it is Red Start
right out of Vermont.
Natural Resources. So they're doing Pequawket Pond and the
Right. Which is not the Dundee. That's
No.
a separate.
Yeah.
but they're focusing on that, and then in addition doing the Tin Mountain tract first, and the Doublehead and Thorn Mountain tracts will, if they're not completed by March of 2026, will be completed no later than March of 2027.
So again, why did the first person who did the management plan why was that plan not,
Because there was no invasive species management plan included in that,
that's a requirement, I remember that much.
and I think there were some things that they were adding into that, like the maple, there were other uses that weren't covered in that were coming up, so if they were going to have a maple sugaring operation, that would require a deviation from the plan, so I think they want.
And I think part of it too is trying to break it out so that each parcel had its own specific, unique
Yeah.
plan.
Yeah.
And I think the idea, I think that the previous plan, the knock against it was that it kind of looked at it as one
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah.
I think it's just, I think this next meeting will be productive. I think it's been hard because there's a lot of different user groups.
Mhm.
And so it's just hard to figure out exactly to say there's gonna be backcountry glades and mountain biking and cross-country skiing trails and hiking trails and
Hunting.
hunting and
Logging.
maple sugaring and logging, that's a lot.
Hunting and trapping are required in the easement. There's no sense
Yeah,
debating those things
Yeah.
because they're
Yeah.
required in the easement.
yeah,
So it's a lot to try and figure out how that all,
yeah.
Uh,
And there's the ham house.
I think quite frankly,
But the Ham House is a separate entity, isn't
You're
it?
It's where
correct,
the, it's
yeah.
where the energy
That-
is. The meetings I've been at,
I know,
It's
I
like
have a
the-
hard time why they're spending so much time on it. Let the
'Cause it's fun.
Ham House.
well, they were gonna hold the next meeting at the Ham House, and it's like, there's no way you're holding a meeting at the Ham House and doing the recreation plan. There's just
No.
absolutely no way. It's just, that's not how you run a meeting.
Let it be a separate entity. I mean, I'm all for the restoration. I
I
don't know
can't
how
agree with you
long it'll
more.
last, but,
yeah,
I think what they're doing is
it's
fine.
consistent.
Well,
But it's been cut out of the
that's correct.
Yeah,
Dundee Forest.
exactly.
Actually, what I'm gonna do at the next meeting is, I've already built a matrix out of this. Here's your three major parcels. Here are the different recreation uses. Let's just go down and do a first cut first. Is mountain biking gonna happen on the Bartlett track? No. Okay? There's no sense. And the mountain bikers have already said, most of these blocks aren't big enough. Fishing, look, these are first order streams for all practical purposes, little tiny trails. The fishing group don't even show up anymore because this is just not priority. Is fishing required? Yes, but is there any need to do anything more? No. You can build a matrix and get down to the few core
Right, the
places
things worth discussing.
that's worth discussing, and that's what the next meeting, hopefully, I'm gonna put a matrix together.
And
throw it
Mike,
out.
did you make the suggestion not to put a trail near Tin Mountain because bootleg trails would be created to link up?
No, my suggestion was to create an official trail to Tin
Okay.
Mountain. Because there was I think the suggestion, someone, I can't remember who, said, oh, we won't have the trails meet, it'll like swoop then and people can kind of walk back and forth if they want to. And I said, please don't do that. We should have an official trail to reduce impact and channel people. And so that was, and Tin Mountain is super excited about having a connector trail.
And if you look at the original forest plan, there are 2 proposals there, and
Yeah.
I'm going to guess plus or minus because those maps in the original forest plan are not highly accurate, but when you look at them, you say they're pretty damn close to where it's just common sense.
Yeah. So no, we definitely want a trail that connects. So that's what I'd advocated for that. So I think that'll help take some of the pressure off of the Rockwell Sanctuary, off of the Rockwell House property.
Yeah.
And as far as fishing, one of the proposals was to do trout restoration down in that little brook.
They did some already.
It's
Did they
done.
do some?
Yep, it's done. It completely wrapped up the trout work at the very end of the summer. But that's all been done, and they'll go back in and oh gosh, I think they go back for the next 3 years and look at macros, or maybe they go back in 3 years and assess that way. But I know that there's a follow up as well.
Yeah,
I don't remember
there-
exactly.
Yeah, I can't remember the testing, but they do go back and do a survey of.
They do a survey, and I can't remember if it's once every 3 years, once in 3 years, or if it's every year for the next 3 years. But yeah, no, they wrapped up and it's all done. And you know, like Dick Fortin, who's like the head of all brook trout restoration projects, came and looked at it and thought it looked really nice. And so I haven't actually looked at it, but it's all done.
Yeah. So I think before the next meeting, there may be some meeting to go and walk a trail that they want to lay out
From Ham, like the Ham, that
in that area.
And they want to get that done pretty quick, because if you want to be competitive, you have to, what you're going to put in, but, you know, they're talking about a parking lot that would serve that trail and the ham house, which is very logical. You got to get your act together and move quick, because there's potential to get, I mean, Upper Saco only has X number of dollars to put into this kind of thing, and if you can get $80,000, that's big money for that kind of stuff. But you got to move fast if you got. I mean, grants, you're either in on time or you're not in on time. Amen.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the only thing that I'm carrying into that next meeting, in terms of recreation plans, is that trails be as multi-use as possible. I guess I'm not. I guess I would have to see proposals of where things are. I think there are more ecologically protected areas, and I think it was one of those when David Shedd presented his idea for this trail, and he kind of laid out, I want to lay out this trail that goes out to these special trees, examples of trees, and I was like, that's a really good idea of getting people to go out and look at things and ruin them. That was the only thing in my head. I was like, I love this idea, and you're saying that we love our trails to death, so maybe there's a reason why Bristlecone Pine National Monument, they don't tell you where the old tree is.
Because people would be peeling the bark off it to
Yeah.
take it as a souvenir.
Yeah, it was like,
I think the connecting trail, you want to take a look at it. What's your topography and your soil so that you can lay it down where the environment isn't working against you.
Yeah.
So, because it's a short connecting trail, it's not like you're building a huge trail system. The objective is to get you from there up onto, to connect with yours. It's short, it's pretty straightforward. The question is, where's the soils and the topography the best to put a trail?
That's not, is that the same zone that David was talking about?
I think it's, he had a couple of big loops that he wanted that were in that ham house vicinity, and he was gonna go out and flag something, or he was gonna go out with someone from the land trust and GPS it, and then provide the GPS coordinates to the committee, and or
He knows that area really well.
yeah. So I think that's, I also hope for a little bit more structure at our next meeting, so
When's the next meeting?
June, something or other. So,
That seems like one worth attending.
It would be. It would be. It'd be an interesting one.
Yeah. Wasn't it?
June 11th. That's all I have on that. Did you have anything else to add?
No.
Okay. The only other new business is that the Bartlett Conservation Commission will be hosting Wendy Scribner, who did our invasive presentation, on the 17th at Ledge Brewing. So I'm just going to distribute that out to E-News in case anyone missed that and would like to attend. I thought that was she did a good presentation, and then also following on that, I was just sent an email from Ann Pillion about the knotweed at the town hall, and kind of working with them as they're going to be moving the building, working on that plan. And my only insight into that was, well, we're not going to do anything until the site is stabilized, and just
Well, there is a second issue there, because they'll be moving dirt, etc. You want to make sure that they're not moving the invasive there to someplace else. That's how we got, with a stump dump up at Prospect. That's how we ended up with.
so I sent the best practices, and just that was my main concern, was that in the process of moving that we don't want to start any remediation until all the heavy equipment is off the site, and that.
But if they're moving soils off-site, you want to be careful.
Yeah, or just to a new location. So
Right, because they're going to build up that wherever the house is going. Aren't they going to build it up? I thought I read that somewhere.
Higher.
That they're going to get it. They're going to get it higher.
It's much higher.
Yeah.
I don't think so, but I may be wrong.
I
They're
thought
moving it up onto the
Higher spot.
higher spot. I don't know if
Yeah.
they're bringing fill in,
Oh, I thought they were. Maybe I was wrong.
I don't
Maybe
think so.
I misread that.
but that's all I have. Anyone else? No? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Filibuster here?
Yeah, you got your 25 hours.
Let's talk about it.
How's it going? Fine.